What happens when the best driver in the world feels like his car isn't responding? Max Verstappen had one of his worst Fridays of the year in Hungary, and his radio messages speak volumes. Do you think Red Bull is starting to lose control this season? Let me know in the comments. What exactly went wrong with the RB21, and what consequences could it have for the rest of the GP? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we're going to take a detailed look at what happened on the first day of the 2025 Hungarian GP, where Verstappen was clear something wasn't working, and he said so openly over the radio. The first day of activity at the 2025 Hungarian GP produced a completely unexpected image. Max Verstappen, far from his usual center stage, struggling with an RB21 that simply wasn't responding as he expected. From the start of FP1, the Dutchman displayed a level of discomfort rarely seen on track. He finished ninth, but beyond his position, what was worrying was his sensations. The times were alarming. In FP1, he clocked a 1 minute and 16.940 seconds, almost 9/10 off the session's best time, set by Lando Norris. But the real problem revealed itself in the second free practice session. Verstappen not only didn't improve, but his performance dropped even further. He finished in 14th place, with a time of 1 minute and 17.624 seconds. That's more than a second slower than the FP2 leader. And most worrying, no compound allowed him to find any rhythm. The atmosphere in the Red Bull pit box was tense. The cameras showed a quiet, visibly frustrated Verstappen, reviewing data with the engineers, barely looking up. It was clear that something wasn't working, and that the driver wasn't happy with the direction the team had taken in terms of setup and strategy. His body language was as clear as his words on the radio. His discontent wasn't a one-off. It wasn't an isolated error. It was the sum of multiple flaws that affected his overall performance. What was most striking on this first day at the Hungaroring wasn't just Max Verstappen's slow times, but the intensity and tone of his radio communications. During both free practice sessions, the Dutch driver's radio clearly reflected his frustration. And these weren't simple technical comments. They were direct, visceral messages, laden with confusion, annoyance, and a clear loss of patience. One of the first to be heard was clear and worrying. "Today was really tough. Little grip and no balance. I don't even know what the problem is, but something's not working." This phrase set the tone for what was to come. Max wasn't speaking with the perfectionist zeal of someone looking to fine-tune details. He spoke like a driver who simply doesn't recognize the car he's driving. And that, coming from someone who has pushed the RB21 to the limit all season, should set off alarm bells. Minutes later, the frustration escalated even further. "I'm in brake mode 5, and it won't turn even if I'm magic," he blurted out, making it clear that neither the electronic adjustments nor the aids configured to improve handling were helping. These kinds of comments, more emotional than technical, are unusual for Verstappen, and are the most direct evidence that the situation was not only uncomfortable but desperate. Feeling like the car isn't reacting in corners, on a track as technical as the Hungaroring, is more than a setup issue. It's a total loss of confidence. And then came the moment that had the greatest impact on engineers and fans. Why Mode 9? Why? I don't understand anything. That message is key. It reflects disconnection. The driver didn't understand why the team was making certain strategic decisions regarding engine mode and power management. At that point, the fluid relationship between driver and engineer seemed completely severed. The fact that Max, in the middle of a session, directly questions the logic behind a technical order demonstrates a rift in decision-making that goes beyond the usual. This accumulation of complaints cannot be taken lightly. They are not simple vents. Each sentence revealed a different dimension of the problem. The grip, the balance, the brakes, the engine modes. Nothing was working as it should, and Max was feeling it in every corner, in every attempt at a fast lap. And if what we heard on the radio was intense, what lies behind those complaints is even more so. Because everything points to the fact that the technical decisions that Red Bull implemented in this Grand Prix could be at the center of the storm. To understand Verstappen's reaction and the poor performance shown on track, it's necessary to carefully analyze the technical package that Red Bull brought to the Hungarian GP. The RB21 arrived with a series of specific improvements that, at least on paper, sought to optimize the car's performance on a demanding circuit like the Hungary. However, what appeared to be a controlled evolution ended up generating new imbalances. What's more serious is that it's unclear whether the team anticipated these changes or simply underestimated their real impact. One of the elements that Red Bull introduced was an improvement to the cooling system. They knew that the Hungary, with its constant hard braking and low average speed configuration, places great thermal demands on the brakes. Therefore, new air intake and exhaust ducts were installed, with larger vents designed to optimize operating temperatures at all times. In theory, this modification was supposed to improve braking efficiency without compromising other elements of the car. But in practice, Verstappen not only noticed no improvement, but also reported a loss of response and a feeling of instability when braking. Another important adjustment was the addition of an elongated flap on the front wing. This part was intended to increase downforce on the front axle without drastically altering the overall balance of the car. It was a seemingly clever solution, designed to provide more grip in slow corners, precisely where the Hungary is most punishing. But what happened on track was the opposite. Max reported understeer on corner entry, and a car that simply didn't respond to steering inputs. Despite these supposed advantages, the RB21's structural problems became evident from the first lap. The most serious was the lack of mechanical grip. This isn't just related to aerodynamics, but to the way the car transfers its weight and adheres to the road. At the Hungary, where many corners are taken in second or third gear, this type of grip is essential. But Max's car simply didn't have it. The passage through chicanes and hairpins was slow, uncertain, and erratic, unusual for a team that has dominated these types of corners for years. Another critical point was the car's overall balance. Red Bull failed to find an effective load distribution between the front and rear axles. This resulted in completely unpredictable behavior: oversteer in the transition phase, understeer in medium leverage corners, and a general instability that prevented Verstappen from trusting his car at any point. Each corner was a new challenge, and that's a death sentence for a driver who requires pinpoint precision. And when it comes to confidence, we can't ignore the brake issues. Despite the new ventilation system being intended to improve performance, Max repeatedly complained of poor pedal feel. Finally, there is strategy, the point that generated the most tension between Verstappen and his engineer. During the session, he was assigned engine modes and race plans that, he himself stated over the radio, made no sense. He felt his previous feelings weren't taken into account, that decisions were imposed without discussion. And that's serious, because if there's one thing that has always worked at Red Bull, it's the fluid relationship between driver and wall. Breaking that dynamic can have long-term consequences. One of the most talked about adjustments relates to suspension geometry. Apparently, in post-Friday session analysis, Red Bull engineers found that the chosen setup compromised mechanical grip in slow corners. This would partly explain why Verstappen felt so uncomfortable on the circuit's more technical sections. The option being considered is a revision of the car's camber and overall rake, seeking to improve contact with the asphalt in sections where the RB21 was losing time significantly. There has also been talk of an evolution of the side barge boards. These elements, while inconspicuous at first glance, play a key role in channeling airflow toward the rear of the car. In theory, Red Bull is testing a redesign with finer, more defined slots, which would help reduce turbulence and stabilize the car's cornering behavior. This modification could be implemented as early as FP3 if the simulator results and data collected on Friday justify it. Another possibility that has gained traction is the use of new engine mappings. During the second free practice session, Verstappen was forced to use settings he didn't understand or simply didn't agree with. Given this, Red Bull could be preparing a comparison in FP3 between modes 6, 7, and 8, trying to find the exact balance between performance and operating temperature. Recall that one of the main problems was brake overheating, so adjusting power delivery could be key to reducing the thermal demands on the entire system. Finally, there is one technical speculation that has attracted particular attention: the possible debut of a new, revised floor. Although not planned for this Grand Prix, some voices within the paddock claim that the team could bring forward its introduction if Friday's data confirms that the car suffers from aerodynamic instability under rapid lean. This floor would have a new way of channeling air under the chassis, reducing the porpoise phenomenon and improving car control during lateral acceleration phases. According to information leaked from within the paddock, Red Bull is already working on a series of minor adjustments that could be implemented immediately for Saturday's session. These include a new axle alignment to allow for a more balanced load distribution, both under braking and acceleration. Also mentioned is a review of the car's rake, seeking to slightly modify the chassis camber to improve stability without compromising top speed. Furthermore, one of the most concrete moves expected is the implementation of rear tires with reinforced casings. These compounds would allow for a greater thermal working range, especially in slow track conditions and high temperatures such as those experienced in Hungary. Verstappen complained of instability in medium leverage corners and exit, and this type of tire could help reduce the rear-end slip that so affected him on Friday. In the short term, Saturday will be the first major test. Red Bull must demonstrate not only its ability to react, but also its clarity in prioritizing what the car really needs. Qualifying at the Hungaroring is often critical because overtaking is so difficult there, so there's minimal room for maneuver. After everything we've seen and analyzed, it's clear that Max Verstappen's performance at the Hungarian GP isn't just a bad day. It's a sign that both Red Bull's engineers and technical management must heed. And now, the conversation is yours too. I want to know your opinion. Do you think this was just a temporary stumble, or is this a deeper symptom of wear and tear on the team? Will Verstappen be able to turn things around, or are rivals like McLaren and Ferrari getting closer to taking control? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.